Okay, so I'm going to start the day on a slightly vague note. I'm going to be looking at these very, very straightforward basic questions. How do you define academic literacy? What does it cover? Who teaches it and how? And I imagine you'll find quite a lot of reassurance in the second of our two talks, because there will be slightly more concrete and straightforward answers to these. But you will probably be coming away from my talk this morning thinking, okay, no further forward really, but at least I'm reassured that that's where I'm supposed to be. So if I were to be defining information literacy, if I was standing up here as a librarian rather than a learning developer, I would be talking you through the fact that there are several definitions of information literacy. You've got the CILIT one, you've got the UNESCO one, you've got the ALA one. I would be talking about the ANSIL framework under what could be included, and I would be talking about ANSIL because it's one of the things that I worked on at Cambridge, so I'm team ANSIL. I also work at Newcastle where we had the Amazing More event, so I feel I should also be cheering for the 7 pillars. But at least there are at least 2, there are more frameworks of what information literacy actually covers. I can't offer you any for academic literacy, sorry. Who teaches it and how? Librarians will teach information literacy. The answer to that one is a little bit more problematic with academic literacies, and that's partly why it's a contested concept, because who owns it? So if nothing else, I will at least hopefully leave you with an idea of why it's not quite so straightforward before I completely give up on trying to get anywhere sensible with it. Okay, so who owns it? Academic literacy. Well, in the first instance, I guess it's academics, because academic literacy arises out of what they do, the research and the teaching. So in a sense, it's theirs, they own it. But for them, it's very often a very sort of tacit thing. It's what we call unconscious competence. They're very, very good at it, but they really cannot explain it to you because it's so natural. It's like, sort of breathing. I'm going to share with you a piece of feedback I got from one of my teaching sessions a couple of months ago. It's the most wonderful backhanded compliment I've ever had. I wasn't expecting to get much out of the essay lecture, given it was delivered by someone who really didn't know the field. And I will hold my hand up, it was marine science. I don't know anything about marine science, fair comment. Especially given how the lecturer's suggestions on how to write essays are kind of patchy and inconsistent at the best of times, but it was actually really helpful. Oh, thanks. It clarified a lot of stuff that lecturers haven't really been that good at explaining. And it was kind of in a backhanded compliment kind of way, pleasant to read this, but it really puts its finger on the difficulty that academic literacies may be owned by, arise out of the practice of academics, but it's like asking a fish to teach you how to swim. It's very hard for them to articulate what they do as second nature. So in a sense, an outsider like myself who knows not a thing about marine science might actually be better placed to help students work with it. Now, this is a little bit different to information literacy, where in a sense, you guys own that because it's arisen out of the systems, the terminologies, the concepts that you've developed to help, catalogue information, to help search and find information. In a sense, that started with you guys and you own it, whereas I come in as an outsider trying to explain something which isn't part of my practice. So who else looks at it? Linguistics and education researchers. They're the ones who try to make visible what's going on, and they're coming at it at an angle of linguistics. So let's look at texts and try and make explicit what's happening in these texts in terms of practices, in terms of discourses. So they're researching it and publishing their findings. I don't know that the academics necessarily read linguistics or pedagogic research. So there's a bit of a gap there. And these other 2 groups, the EAP teachers and the learning developers, are 2 of the main groups that are the practitioners that teach this stuff. EAP, English for Academic Purposes, are those who work with international students to help improve their fluency in the language. But as we'll see, it's not just about fluency in English. It's a very specific type of English, English for academic purposes. Don't be talking like this down the pub with your friends when you make native speaker friends, because they'll think you're insane. Learning developers is what I am. We are a very new profession. Some of you may work alongside learning developers because very often we're situated in libraries, but we're also situated in student services. Sometimes we're alongside education developers, the ones who train academics how to teach. So we are, probably the last 20 years we've been around. You may work alongside us and not realise, because we don't, like you, have the privilege of a very long established job title. You can say to someone, I'm a librarian, and they'll probably, with a few kind of cliches about cardigans and knitting, they will have some idea of what you do. If I say I'm a learning developer, not a clue. So we may actually go by different job titles. We might be study skills coaches, we might be academic skills advisors, but our professional body is the Association of Learning Developers in Higher Education. So we, for ourselves, call ourselves learning developers. Just one thing to point out there then for practitioners. One, E, focuses on English, focuses on language. That's where they're primarily coming from. Learning developers focus on learning. So that might explain, again, some of the contested nature of academic literacies. The two people who teach this are coming at this from slightly different angles. Slightly muddy by the fact that a lot of EAP teachers have become learning developers, in the way that actually quite a lot of librarians become learning developers when they start to teach outside information literacy. Okay. Work. Text 1. I'd like you to just sort of look at this text with me. So this is text number 1. It should be in the pack, shouldn't it? Yeah, there's a handout that looks like this. And I'm going to put you in my shoes. So students come to see you, and as they do, they bring a text, and they kind of push this text at you anxiously and hope that you will help them develop it in some mysterious academic literacies way. Okay, so you've had a quick skim through that. You're the learning developer, you're the EAP tutor, or you're possibly even the academic, trying to help a student develop their academic literacies. They bring you this text. What are you identifying? Just have a very quick skim read. This is not a proofreading test. Oh, there was a natural lull there, which I will take advantage of. So what kind of things are you seeing? What kind of advice would you be giving the student who's sitting in front of you going, I need to improve this, I need to develop my academic literacy? They probably wouldn't use that word, actually, because, again, it's one of the words that is better known within our community. I tend to use study skills as a shorthand. So what kind of things are you seeing here? Any thoughts? What are you picking out?
Firstly, the citations are all very old.
Yes.
So it indicates a sort of lack of familiarity with more up-to-date literature.
Yes, that's an information literacy answer, and yes, I would probably be gently nudging them towards a librarian for that. Yeah, but you're right. Yes, but it will come in relevant later on, so that I'm not dismissing that answer. It will come in later where we look at where the two join up.
There's lots
Yeah.
of things that are wrong with it. It's very formally written. You've got lots of it's.
Yeah.
And also there's I'm going to discuss this, I think. There's sources that aren't really linked back to anything. Like it's very well
Yeah.
known that lots of young people drink.
Yeah.
Well, actually, lots of young people are not more sober than people my age these days.
Or actually, yes.
But it's just wrong.
Yeah. So we've got. It's just wrong. If I'm working with a student, I will tactfully reframe that. Yeah, Anna was saying that there was quite a lot of laughter in the room, which was pleasing, but a lot of my role is kind of trying to reframe what I'm seeing for the student. So yes, there's some things here which we're kind of responding to. So we've got things like, there's a lot of it's, there's a lot of, if I just bring up some advice, there's a lot of contractions, a lot of it's were being picked up there. There is the use of I, the first person, which our colleague also mentioned. And there's some unsubstantiated, unlinked comments. There's not really a lot of evidence that's well known that drinking too much, is it? It's a bit of a sweeping statement, given how many people do in fact drink too much. But linking of ideas is the odd thing in there. I'm thinking, where has that come from? So, where are we? Experiment with using illicit drugs has been connected with suicide. And I thought we were talking about alcohol. Where's that come from? So what's the link there? There are very few of those words in comparison, on the contrary. In fact, although, thus, therefore, that kind of academic linking word isn't there. Any other insights or observations? Because I think you've picked up very nicely on all of those right from the start. Yeah.
Where she's sort of quoting other studies, she was saying it was citing the subsequent studies.
Yeah.
Just listing them.
Yeah, so she's listing studies, but she's not going to pick up on subsequent studies. So we're not seeing any sense of debate here, conversation perhaps? Does that cover my summarising accurately? it's a bit rubbish. I will refer to the librarians on that one. I will plead ignorance of EndNote. I have no idea how to use that. No, you have to go and see one of my colleagues. Yeah. So there's a lot of things that we're picking up. This is from one of the best-selling study skills textbooks, Stella Cottrell. She has an empire of study skills. I think Palgrave Macmillan are the ones that she works with. So it's online. She's got a whole range of books. This is from her big one, the Study Skills Handbook, which has been around for quite a long time now. So it's very, very well established in the field. This is what students will be buying when they go down the university bookshop in their first year and then never read again. Okay, so this is our starting point. What kind of assumptions are we seeing here, though? The implications of the term skill is an issue. We're calling this a study skills approach. The skill is something you have or you don't have. So these are study skills approaches. This is a definition from Lee and Street. Now, Lee and Street, really, they coined the term academic literacies in the plural. And they are framing this approach, the approach that we've just taken to the students' work, as a study skills approach. So writing literacy is primarily an individual and cognitive skill. This student's just got it wrong. They just need to learn it, that you don't use its contractions, that you don't use the first person. It's focusing on surface features of language. What we were picking out there was just kind of the top level, I guess, of grammar, of style, that kind of thing. And it's assuming a kind of transferable skill. That if you learn how to do this, then you can write properly. And I see a lot of students referred to me from academics saying, they can't write properly. Can you teach them how to write properly? As if there was one way of writing, and the student just for some reason hadn't got it. So they can transfer it unproblematically from one context to another. But this is academic literacies. What we're picking up on just now, that was sort of general literacy in a way. So the study skills approach, if you have a study skill, fine. If you don't have it, you're in deficit. So it's a deficit model, and we have to remediate it through our teaching. So we fix it. And writing is just a technical skill. It's fairly straightforward. Why can't they just? Is the language that I hear a lot from academics. So it's bolt-on. I can come and you can wheel me into your lecture theatre and I will go, never use the first person, never use contractions, scatter a few therefores and thuses around, fine, and then you can wheel me off again. And it doesn't matter whether I did that in marine biology, in occupational health, in English literature. I will come in and I'll do the same lecture and my life would be easy. I do over 100 sessions a year in schools and I could just do the same one forever. It'd be great. I wouldn't need to know anything about the subject the students were working in. Easy. It's generic, so it's the same for all subjects, and it's diagnostic, so I'm diagnosing. I'm looking at your work and saying, do you have that skill or do you not? Which is a quasi-medical way of working. There is something wrong with you, and we will give you a prescription to fix it. So it's pathologizing. It's putting the problem in the student. The student is the issue here. There's nothing particularly academic about the issues that we've just picked up. They're style issues, they're grammar issues. There were quite a few grammar glitches there. There were a few missing commas, there were a few run-on sentences. There was at least 2 typos in there, and I know because I put them in there. But the other thing is these rules aren't actually always true, because medical students will have to do reflective writing. And you try writing a reflective journal without using the word I. It's really hard, and it would be daft. So that's not even always true. I have seen in social sciences where they're acknowledging that there is human agency and human error and human subjectivity. That's part of their research methodology. They use I to reflect that. So you will see I in a lot of academic writing, and students pick up on that. It's in this book, why can't I say it? No answer from that from the study skills perspective. And it only applies to some. This approach has come from EAP, Let's Fix Those Foreigners English. It's not quite representing it fairly there. It's coming from widening participation. Let's fix those students from a non-traditional background so that they're proper students, like traditional students, and specific learning difficulties. So let's fix those students who have a disability. So it's only applicable to some. How can that be an overarching concept like academic literacies if it's just applicable to some people? It doesn't quite seem right. It doesn't feel right to me. Okay, let's try a different approach then. Let's try a slightly better text. Let's look at number 2, which is exactly the same text, but with some of those issues fixed, not the referencing ones though. Let's try something a little bit more humane. Okay, again, you probably need a little bit less time to run through this because this is exactly the same text, except now the student's gone away, they've applied the advice that we've given them, they've fixed all the first persons, they've fixed all the abbreviations, they've tidied up some of that slightly loose, informal, chatty language that I said I didn't like. And they've come back. Their lecturers referred them again. What often happens here, actually, is I'll get a student who's been referred by a lecturer, and they'll show me the text, and the feedback will be, the lecturer says I need to fix my grammar. And I'll look at it and I think, there's nothing wrong with your grammar. So there's something else going on here. The academic literacy clearly is just a little bit more than grammar and style because they've been referred back with this text. Again, share your opinions on this, how much of an improvement you think it is, why they've been referred back, because in some ways it sounds okay. What makes it sound academic? Where is it less academic? And therefore, what is academicness that we're seeing or not seeing? This is harder. We're moving on from some of the concrete things that we've been looking at. Yeah.
What I didn't know, do you want us to feedback now?
Yep, can do if you feel you already have stuff to say, yeah?
Well, it's just, for me, it's unsynthesized, isn't it? They're not drawing any of the threads together. It might as well be a list of bullet points.
Yeah, it's not synthesized.
It just doesn't,
Yeah.
it lacks the so what factor. I don't
Yeah.
care. They've written all this stuff and they've evidenced it, but I don't care about the study because they've not really made it sound like I should care about it.
Yeah,
They've
it's...
made these points about how terrible it is, but then haven't connected that dot up.
Yeah, so it's lacking the so what factor. My question is, why are you telling me this? That's interesting, but why are you telling me this?
Yeah, you still don't really get the fact that they're talking about a study that they're going to do.
Yeah, it's not got to the point early enough. There's a point in there somewhere, but it's way down the end of that paragraph, and I'm still not quite sure that we're realising, oh, that's the point. It might have sneaked past us because it's so lightly made. Yeah. Any other points you'd like to raise? Yeah.
You mentioned at the end that the problem stress in medical students and doctors is acute, but it doesn't say how the use of alcohol or drug use is an escape from that, or link that in any way, or perhaps frame it not actually what the study is going on to be.
Yeah, so there's no framing there. Suddenly, we're talking about medical students, but why are we looking at them all of a sudden? There's no link to what we've been talking about, which is very, very broad, people. And then suddenly medical students. Why medical students? Why Newcastle University? I'm from Newcastle. I love Newcastle. It does have a certain reputation for alcohol. It's fun, but we're also medical students. Maybe they're using it for a particular reason. Why is it a particular issue with medical students? Maybe studying medicine's hellish. Certainly seems quite stressful. So why are we looking at medical students? Yeah, again, purposefulness. Anything else that you're picking up on? It's harder to put your finger on, though, isn't it? We're talking now about impressions that we're getting and things that we're not sure about.
Also mentions that we get the last sentence about the nature of some of the more common drugs are described. Again, why? How does that?
Yeah.
It just feels another random thing to chuck in the pot.
Yeah.
Is that, looking specifically at the Newcastle students, or how is that helping with the study?
Yeah, how does that help? How does describing these drugs... It's lovely that you're going to do that. I look forward to that. But why? How is it going to relate? Because I still don't know how these various bits of information are related to each other. Yeah, so there's still a problem here, but it's much harder to articulate. I think that's why we resort to the study skills approach, because it's easy to say, oh, you're missing a comma there, than it is to say, I'm just not sure, there's something I'm not getting here. But we're digging deeper into it, which I think is getting closer to what academic literacy is. Another piece of very typical study skills advice, this is from Leeds University's website. Do we have any Leeds colleagues here? It's a fantastic resource, but this is an academic socialization approach. So what we're saying here basically is academic writing is a bit strange. It's not your average bog standard writing. And we do need to articulate these. We need to make them explicit for you. So here they've tried to do that. Its purpose is to aid the reader's understanding. I'm not sure there's really that many text genres which don't have the purpose to aid the reader's understanding, maybe poetry. But we need to dig a bit deeper. What kind of understanding and why? I think this student has taken that advice on face value. I will help you understand drugs. I will help you understand why alcohol is a problem. That's nice, but what for? They're writing to show off how much they know. Look, I know about these things. Look, I've read stuff. But that sense of purpose is lacking, you're right. So the characteristics, planned and focused, demonstrates an understanding of the subject. Well, the student's done that. Clearly they understand it. Structured, it's written in a coherent logical order, brings together related points of material, kind of does that, but you as the reader are having to do a lot of work to figure out why it's related. Yes, clearly there are points, but I'm having to figure out why they're related. So maybe it's not doing that. Academic writing puts the onus on the writer to make sure that the reader's okay, whereas something like literature, if you're reading a murder mystery, the onus is on the reader to make sense, and that's where the fun comes in, that you're wondering what's going to happen next. I wonder what that piece of information's significance will be later down the line. You don't want to be thinking that when you're reading academic writing, because you've got a stack of these to read. You've got 50 students, and the kids need to be put to bed, and you've got lessons to plan for tomorrow. You really don't want to be sitting there going, oh, I wonder where this is going. Structured, you felt the structure was off. It was leading up to something like a murder mystery. So here's some information about alcohol. Here's some information about drugs. Medical students will come into this somewhere. And then finally, we get the point, almost. So the structure's wrong. It's not a murder mystery, it's a court report. This is the problem, this is who I arrested, now let me show you your evidence. So it's not that it's badly structured, but it's not academically structured in the way that an academic reader would expect. It's like fairy tales. If I said to you, there were once 3 princes, you know how that story ends. That the first one will go on a quest, the eldest, and he will fail. The middle one will set out on the quest, and he will fail. And it's the youngest one who will slay the dragon and win the princess. You know how that works. And there are underlying narrative patterns in academic writing too, which you couldn't possibly know. And you were getting a sense of it, but it's very hard to articulate. It will just feel wrong, but that's why. So structured, there was a problem there with structure. Evidenced, demonstrates knowledge of the subject area. Well, yeah. Supports opinions and arguments. That was not coming through so strongly because you didn't know what the opinion was. Formal intent and style, yes, it's got that stuff. So again, I could work with a student using this kind of approach and help them to understand in your writing, you are meant to be showing these qualities. This is what it means to write as an academic, as a medical student. Okay. Without that understanding, what happens is students will start to scatter these things like fairy dust. You want some references, okay, have some references. You want some linking words, okay, have a thus and a therefore and a however. Just scatter them. So they need to have a little bit more understanding about the why. Why is it like this? What are our values? What are we looking for? What are our kind of narratives that we tend to tell, our stories in academia? Okay, so this approach, academic socialization, is the students' acculturation into discipline and subject-based discourse and genre. So basically, come to us. Academic writing is different. We will teach you how to speak like one of us, how to sound like one of us, how to think like one of us, how to be one of us. So again, it's coming from the massification of higher education that universities have grown, student numbers have grown, but also what counts as academic has grown. Nurses never used to do degrees as such previously. Well, academia has crept out and broadened its boundaries, so that's now become academic. And it's a strange little world, but I will be your guide. Follow me, and I'll show you some of the strange mysteries and oddities that you will encounter, and I will explain it to you, and it will all make sense. So it's acculturating students. It's at the very bottom there. Student writing is transparent medium of representation. Once you get this, what I'm giving you is like an X-ray lens, and you can see through it, and then it all will become clear. Once you know what you're looking for, language is not a problem. We can see through it to what you really mean. We will be able to look through it like a pane of glass and see your learning on the other side. Okay, anything else from there? These quotes, by the way, on the first side of your handout for future reference if you need them later. So once you've learned this, you can just reproduce it unproblematically. It'll be fine. Once you learn to think like us, it'll all be straightforward. Okay, so this is what Lillis, who's one of the major scholars in academic literacies, calls the institutional practice of mystery. We're playing silly games, and my job as a learning developer is to teach them the rules so they can play along as well. So demystifying the institutional practice of mystery. Lovely quote from Bourdieu, who was working with the concept of cultural capital. Academic language is no one's mother tongue, which is reassuring because this stuff home students find difficult, native speakers find difficult, because academic language is not normal. It's odd. And it's embedded in the subject because subjects do write differently. Writing as a nurse is nothing like writing as a history student. They're very, very different. Different genres, different feel, different tone. Okay. But these are not transferable skills. I am a very highly practiced academic writer. I cannot write a committee report for toffee, though. I remember my first job application after finishing my thesis, and I boasted proudly of my superior writing skills from my PhD in my CV. Rubbish. I can't write a committee report. I can't write for a lay audience. I can't do it because my sentences are too long, and they always will be. I find it very, very hard to stop doing this now. I can do it. So they're not transferable skills. Unlike information literacy, none of this really makes sense outside of academia, which raises the questions, why are we getting nurses to write essays? We'll never need to write essays again. Why are we doing this? It's still a focus on product. It's still a focus on the bit of paper in front of you, the text. We're still not really getting behind that to what's going on. So it's not really a focus on process. These are not actually transparent concepts. So if we go back to the advice, academic writing needs to be clear. Okay, you need to write clearly. You see that feedback a lot. You need to write more clearly. All right, but I thought I was being clear. To that student, this will have been clear. So why is it not clear to the writer? Something are going on there. The word clear, it doesn't have a universally accepted meaning, is the difficulty. Okay. One of the main problems for me, though, is this is gatekeeping. To enter into my community, you have to become like me. It doesn't quite feel right. Again, it's kind of deficit. Some students come in with cultural capital. They're middle class, like me. They have learned to speak in a particular way, like me. My parents went to university, so I kind of got it. But there are students who haven't had that background. They will lack the cultural capital that I brought. It doesn't really seem fair to say, you guys have to run extra hard to keep up, to be like me, white, middle class, Western, preferably male. Even I failed my first essay at university, though. So what's going on there? That's an admission. That final text, though, it's exactly the same content. This is where the student supervisors got involved. Oh, God, give it to me. I'll just... this kind of thing. Much shorter. Previous studies of medical students, blah, 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 reference, show that many are drinking excessively. However, it is not clear whether such youthful behaviour among medical students is a temporary phenomenon or whether they'll grow up and stop drinking. Well, they all become alcoholic GPs. This is particularly important because they might become alcoholic GPs. So it's cutting very, very fast to the point. Here's what we know, but this is something we don't know, and I will solve it. Feels a lot better somehow. So what's going on there? This is the Academic Literacies model. Those are exactly the same text, except they feel different. One feels different to the other. Why? The secret is one of them is the first paragraph of a thesis, the other one is the first paragraph of the journal article from the same thesis, written by the same person, probably at the same time, from the same material. So academic literacies is plural because there's more than one type of academic writing. You write a journal article differently to you write a thesis from a reflective piece and so on. So it's plural to acknowledge that. But it's also plural because there's more than one perspective here. It's concerned with meaning making. The writer and the reader bring different things to this, and there's somewhere in the middle where we're getting lost. What counts as knowledge? So we're the students having to stake their claim to knowledge. They didn't do it very well in text 2. They have done it very well in text 3. Oddly, you kind of felt they were more authoritative. Same content. So there's something about the way that they wrote there which made you feel they were more authoritative. Okay, so in this kind of tutorial with a student, I'd be having this conversation. So what's your authority? Who can you be? Are you writing as a PhD student? I need to demonstrate that I know stuff. Or are you writing as a peer? I'm a published academic, I know stuff. I don't need to rehearse all of this stuff that I've read. You can take that on trust. Cuts to the chase much more quickly. So who they can be is very different in those two circumstances. So it's about their identity. Who am I being right now? That will affect the way I write. Who do you want to be? I don't want to write like that. It doesn't feel like me. That's not the way I would say it. Well, we need to take into account the reader as well. So that's the next one. What can you say? I want to say that, but bearing in mind the reader, the context, what can you say? What do you want to say? And how can you say it? So authority, identity, authorship, what you want to say, so the knowledge claims that you're making, and authorial presence, the voice that you have, the way that you come across. And so who can you be? Who do you want to be? Who do you need to be? And that's where the negotiation comes in. I'll be talking to them about, well, these are the things that you need to negotiate between. These are the things you have to think about and to juggle. So I'm giving them no answers here. I'm just helping them think through the decisions that they're making. And I don't know the implications of those decisions. They've read more medical articles than I have, so I'm coaching at this point. I'm drawing out of them. Well, what have you read elsewhere that sounded the way that you want to sound? Okay, well, how can you model yourself on that? I don't have these answers, but they do somewhere. Okay. So the student academic literacies, they're going to have to switch all the time between different subjects. So maybe they're reading medicine, then they're reading clinical psychology, then they're reading sort of management literature. They're reading different genres, different subjects, different levels. Undergrad writing, very different from PhD. If you submit text 3 as an undergrad essay, you're going to fail because you're not allowed to. You cannot write like that as an undergrad. You have to have earned that identity. Language, US writing is very different from British academic writing, strangely. Same language, different cultures. So they're switching, even down to the individual lecturer. Oh, that lecturer hates that, I better not use that. So they're negotiating. But the final thing that I would mention is it's emancipatory. What this is also doing is licensing the student through me to question this. Why do I have to write like that? Why can't I say I, actually? Why can't I say I? It is me. These are my ideas. So we're starting to challenge, we're opening up the bounds of how you can say it, to say, well, why does it need to be that way? Just because that's the way it's always been. Okay, so finally, if I can sum up, what is academic literacies? I haven't got a definition for you. It's lots of things. What might be included? Whatever arises out of the curriculum. I'm not saying in first year, you have to have learned to do this, you have to have learned to do that, you have to have learned to do the other. It's whatever it is that's arising out of the essays you're writing, the reflective journal you're writing. Let's work with that. So I can't determine that. It's not my curriculum. I'm not the one setting the tasks that makes them have to do these things. It's the academics. And it's a nested set of 3 models. We do have to fix the study skills stuff. But then again, we can put it more within an embracing context of learn to think and speak like us. And then finally, that's going to be quite complex. So you're going to have to learn to switch and develop your own agency over that process. And actually, maybe we can learn to challenge the way that we do these things, because frankly, they are just a bit odd. Okay, I would finally like to apologise to the person whose thesis and journal article I have completely butchered. Dorothy Newby Birch, former PhD student at Newcastle University. I apologise, but it was a great thesis. It clearly passed and got published. Okay.
Is everybody still awake? Yes, yeah. Of course you are. Does anybody have a question for Helen? She's going to be around all day, so grab her at coffee, grab her at lunch. But does anybody have a question just at the moment? Because having been in a session with academics and researchers being talked to by an editor about how they should present a paper for publication in a journal article, there's lots of similarities. So that whole lifelong skill and career skill to understand how to write differently for the right thing, I think is really, really important for all of our people, whether it's undergraduates through PhDs through to clinical staff who are writing professionally. So thank you very much. A brilliant start to the morning. Thank you.